interested in families. And we're here to talk about how do you find out where you came from. There are a few preliminaries that I'd like to deal with housekeeping, if you will. Talk about the next program to encourage you to come back to what's happening about 4 weeks from tonight. We'll be having our annual meeting, which will be at the High Street Congregational Church, and it does involve a dinner. You're welcome to come to the dinner. There'll be a very brief business meeting, and then a speaker about waterfalls here in the city of Maine. Particular emphasis, because we're Androscoggin Historical Society, particular emphasis with waterfalls in our county. So we encourage you to consider that. There will be publicity going out. But there's also another way for you to learn about us. We do send out email notices of our programs, and if you're interested in being on that list, you're welcome to sign up. I'll send this around. Perfect. It's optional. We're not taking attendance. So if you're interested in being on the list, to know when our programs come up, simply sign your name, and of course everyone has their pens because you'll be taking notes, but or borrow it from someone next to you. We also encourage you to think about joining the society. There's been a brochure distributed to the seats, the chairs, indicates what kinds of programs we've been having this past year. Our program committee will come up with a new set this summer. So if you might want to join the society, we'd be glad to have you. But now to what we're doing this evening. I'm Doug Hodgkin. I should probably have introduced myself to begin with. I'm Doug Hodgkin. I've done some genealogy and done some research on local history, primarily on Lewiston history, but I'm interested in the entire county. And we do have a couple panelists as well to provide their input. Carol Burbank, to my right, was a kindergarten teacher, and then she got involved in this genealogy and has been tromping through cemeteries and courthouses and so forth. And then Annette Banks-Story on my left has been doing genealogy for many years and has traced ancestry back to Germany and several other countries in Europe. So these are our panelists. They can introduce themselves a bit more. But I'd like to begin with asking them to talk about how they got started on genealogy, how they seized their interest. So I'll ask Carol to begin.
Do I have to stand up?
No, you don't have to.
I retired in 1995, and the week after I retired, we were, as we from Massachusetts said, we're up in Maine, which was my aunt's house in Carmel. And my cousin said, so-and-so asked me if something about our ancestors. Do you know anything? And I said, no. So I went home and started. And that's how I sort of got started on my father's side of the family. And it's progressed from there.
Trying to think of how I got started, and it must have been probably the same year. My mother died in '94, and she had not only been an avid amateur photographer in her single years. And I grabbed her collection of photographs, which had always fascinated me. She always kept them hidden in the attic, so it was more fascinating, right? And then I claimed her boxes of all her professional photographs. Not that she took, but her branch of my family always had their photos taken in studios for every occasion, and I still don't know why. It's the only line I have found that's done that. So she has every professional high school photograph, every confirmation photograph, every wedding photograph, every baby photograph, every studio photograph in those wonderful cardboard folders, right? And so maybe for a year or two after I acquired all of that, I would every once in a while go through these things and remember people that I knew and hadn't seen for 30 or 40 years or whatever. And somehow the handling of those photographs and deciding, and if you came to my house, you'd see I have almost all of them on display. I have different walls and different corners where I've grouped them, because it became apparent to me that it was a shame to keep them in a box. And I wanted these people who were my heritage, I wanted them visible to me. And it's kind of comforting, actually, because I now live alone and I have all these people with me. So as I was going through deciding who I wanted to put next to who and whatever, that's when the genealogy bug bit me. And I decided I had this, and I am a researcher anyway, so I thought, I can do this. But I started by the seat of my pants and in fits and starts, and I think now if I had known then what I know now, I would have gone about it quite differently. But that was the impetus for my efforts, the photographs.
Yeah. My start came much earlier. It was in 1976, and it was the Alex Haley Roots program was on the air, and of course 1976 was the bicentennial year and so forth. But the real impetus was at an Addison family reunion in Leeds. It was rainy, a rainy day, and so we were sitting in the garage, since usually we're outdoors, but we were sitting in the garage, and my grandmother started talking about the family, talking about ancestors, and that just intrigued me. And she talked about our Mayflower ancestor, and she also had some of the more recent generations, and so that's what really started me going. And I also discovered that was on my mother's side, and then I discovered that a cousin of my father had done a lot of genealogy, and so I got a good start. But sometimes I had to correct some of the material that they had collected. So mostly I worked on it from 1976 to 1980, but then I got particularly busy in my occupation, and so I had to set it aside. And then when I retired, I got involved in researching Lewiston history, and so I really haven't got very much back, except occasionally I dip my toes back into the genealogy. So that's how I got started. So we'll begin with Carol talking about just how do you get started. And maybe I just want to ask, how many of you are really newbies, as they say, in genealogy? Just to know
So we have quite a few people who really have not done much. But those of you who have done quite a bit, we encourage you to contribute if you have something to say. But we'll turn it over to Carol to talk about how to get started.
Well, I belong in Claremont, Florida, during the winter to a group called the Past Finders. And they have sessions on how to get started, and so a lot of my material I gleaned from those little classes. You can start with what you know. Write down every birth date, marriage, death of family members that you can remember. And document every fact by indicating who told it to you, where you found it. Ask other family members, well, what do you know? And sometimes they remember something different than another family member did. Ask if they have any original documents, like do you have grandmother's birth certificate? And make a file out of all of these and categorize them. Just write on the outside of your file folder what these particular things are. I know we're in the habit now of scanning things and leaving them in computers, but they crash, so it's good to have copies in folders. As Annette says, collect photos, family papers, military discharge papers, even school records, wills, diaries, other material that you find that's written to your family. This will help you decide later on what is and what isn't, because that sometimes gets very subjective when you're looking. Communicate with relatives that you don't see very often. Just tell them what you're looking for. Sometimes they'll say, forget it. Sometimes they'll be a big help. After you've collected all the materials that you can discover, you may need to send for some documents to say, well, when was Uncle John born? Well, if you can send to the City Hall or the county registry or places like that, then you can get the certificate to find out when Uncle John was born. Something I should have said before, when you're talking with people, take notes, or one of the ladies in our Past Finders group takes a small tape recorder so she can record exactly what people have said, so that she will have this, because sometimes you just can't write fast enough, or you'd rather be asking them questions. Other places that you can collect material is in cemeteries. Some cemeteries are wonderful. My mother is buried in a cemetery in Fall River, Massachusetts. They have everything documented, how old this person was when they died, the date they died, the date they were buried, and they'll gladly give it to you. My father was buried in Lakeville, Massachusetts, with 4 generations or more of his family. And the only information you get from them is what you can take a picture of on the gravestones. They don't have any records. So it's hit or miss, so taking pictures in cemeteries sometimes can be your only clue. And usually they are, for the most part, more accurate than sometimes somebody saying, well, so-and-so. Even when they're recording in a city hall or a town hall, your information is only as accurate as the person giving it and the person writing it down. My stepmother died on December 4th, and I was with her. But when you look up the Social Security records that you can get online, it says she died on December 7th, which is the day that she was buried. My grandfather's name is Salmon, S-A-L-M-O-N. 1 year in the census, he and his father and grandfather, all of the same names. The person who took the census put Solomon as their names. So you have to be very careful. Spelling isn't always important to people, so you've got to be able to filter out what is important and what isn't. I have had 2 things. One is a family group sheet. That's number 1. For each family, you can start with that, and it tells you things that you can put down, their birth and their christening and the marriage. but also put down next to it where you found this material, if you need to refer to it again.